Well, that brings me to the point of something I've always thought you were really good at, and that's reading the room. But in providing the color,
right,
you got to read the room for everybody that's watching.
Yeah, and I've always thought when I've done the games, I've always tried to dumb it down. And because not everybody, I mean, I feel like I've got a Harvard education in college baseball thanks to Skip Bertman, but not everybody does.
Right.
And most people don't. And so I don't want to like go too high level. It's like watching a football game and going, man, they're running a cover 3 and a cover 0 and and like, wait a minute, like is there a tutorial on what a cover 3 and a 0 and a 5 gap and all? Like, most people just kind of act like they know what they're talking about, but they don't.
Because really, you're not trying to make the viewer up to your level.
Right.
You're just trying to entertain them.
You're trying to make sure everybody from a novice to a professional to a pro can understand what you're trying to say. And so I'll sometimes go out of my way to explain something because I want just the layman fan, the passing fan that just happens to be watching for 30 minutes understand without knowing all the nuance, of the game.
Right. Welcome to Under the Knife, the podcast where we cut into topics such as politics, life advice, and medicine, and we do this with the precision of a licensed orthopedic surgeon. I'm your host, Dr. Craig Greene, an orthopedic surgeon and elected public official. Under the Knife with Dr. Craig Greene, Ronnie Rantz. Thanks for being on.
I appreciate it. The title kind of gives me a little bit of PTSD. As a former pitcher who's done a couple of times on his elbow. I don't like hearing about the title.
I don't have a knife.
Okay, good.
And you said I look like I'm in my prison attire. I don't have a shank.
Yeah. How many more months do you have before you ever go home and see the family?
Yeah, exactly. Well, sometimes work can feel like that, but thankfully I have a job where I help people. And,
this is true.
I did see something the other day that it was on Instagram or something that said, yeah, my friend, he has all the time in the world. He has 3 free meals. He reads books all day, and he loves prison. Because at first it sounds like, well, this is amazing.
Right.
No. You know what I think we want is our freedom, our choices. So you can frame that to where it's like, well, no, I don't want that.
I think there's a chance that if people would pay a lot of money for about 6 months of prison, you can get your sit-ups in, your push-ups in, get good shape. And you can just focus on reading and maybe dust up on a law class or 2 in the library.
Or you could just be disciplined.
Yeah.
And do that on your own.
Yeah, but I'll take the prison.
Yeah. Well, we were just talking about Menard High School.
Yeah.
And we had Colonel Evanson on. So tell us about Menard.
Yeah, so Holy Savior Menard is a Catholic school in the center of the state in Alexandria, Louisiana. And I went there 10th through 12th grade.
Okay.
Graduated in 1990. Mike, I don't want to say his age, but he was way before me. But he's a good dude, and he's a proud Menard High alum.
So take us from Menard to LSU Tigers, Skip Bertman.
Well, I've got a great story about that because my family grew up in New Orleans. My mom and dad were from New Orleans. Dad went to Holy Cross. Mom went to Dominican Catholic schools in the city. And when I was going into 8th grade, we moved to Alexandria. My dad had graduated from anesthesia school at Charity Hospital. And he took a job with the state over at the state hospital in Pineville. And so we moved to Alexandria, which was, you talk about going
culture
from
shock.
New Orleans East
right.
to Alexandria, Louisiana. But it was a great time in the late 80s, mid-late 80s, living in Alexandria because England Air Force Base was still around. You had, so that was booming. And it was neat because I was a big sports guy, football, baseball, basketball, and they covered high school sports in Alexandria. They had two news stations.
Really?
You had an ABC affiliate and an NBC affiliate. They had the Town Talk newspaper. So they had multiple sports writers. They had 2 news crews. So they covered high school sports as if it was like college.
Right.
And so that was a really cool thing for me and had some neat experiences and some great exposure back then.
So take us from when did you sports is kind of cool to wait, I can do this.
Right. Pretty early on. I was fortunate after my sophomore year in high school, I went to the Skip Bertman baseball camp. And that week they offered me, they gave me a letter, typed up letter, on a typewriter,
right.
With the LSU baseball letterhead, right? And they gave me a letter that week, and Randy Davis sat me down on a bench outside Broussard Hall and said, hey, when you graduate, when you get to the point where you can sign, here's a letter. We're offering you
when you learn how to write.
Right. We're offering you a scholarship. So I knew, after my sophomore year in high school that, I was holding an LSU offer, and I was 99% sure
sophomore, man, that's talent right there to be committed that early now.
Well, I was a 6'3", probably left-handed pitcher. I mean, they didn't walk around too often on the planet back then.
Right. So you knew early. Now, you and I first met because, speaking of Broussard, that's where I lived. I was walking on the football team. But then eventually my roommates were Todd Walker, Mike Neal, and Brett McCabe. Mm-hmm. And that was the glory years for baseball. Now, not so much for football. We were Curly Hallman era. We've suppressed some of those. But I got to experience some of the baseball vibe through that. I think that's where you and I first met.
That's right.
But
Well, Mike Neal, who was the captain on the 1993 national championship team, he and I were roommates for 3 years. Yeah. Freshman, sophomore, junior year, the three of us just lived together. We didn't have anybody else. So we became really close. Mike, great guy. He's a nurse anesthetist in Dallas, and he's from Hammond High, the Tornadoes. And then you mentioned Todd and Brett. I mean, played 3 years with Brett, 2 years with Todd, and all of those guys are good dudes and good friends.
Yeah. And what's great about that time of life, I walked on, tore up my knees, all that kind of stuff. Gave birth to my profession, so that's a lot of tragedy can turn into triumph kind of deal. But also, if you think, oh gosh, if I'd have gone to this Duke or somewhere else like that, I would have never had the relationships that I have now. And I mean, you think back, and now some LSU baseball players, you can attest to this, you have not been this way, but they get stuck at that phase of life for the rest of life.
Right.
Like that's the only thing they can talk about. But there's such rich experiences and relationships and bonds that are formed. And who does the best Skip impersonation?
Well, I mean, it would definitely be me.
Of course. I wouldn't ask the question.
And by the way, Skip Bertman even agrees.
Okay.
He was asked on the radio one time who does the best Skip Bertman, and he said me. So that's the ultimate. Yeah. But what's funny was one time Roger Cador, who's in the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, he's the longtime coach at Southern University. Roger was being interviewed on ESPN Radio in Baton Rouge, and they had me call in as Skip. Roger, to this day, doesn't know that it wasn't Skip.
Him.
Like, he thinks he had a conversation
with
Skip on the radio show. So I would say if Skip was sitting here now, he'd say, hey, Craig, listen, it's great to be here on Under the Knife. The Knife. Listen, I've had my hips and my knees done. I've been under the knife. Sandy Bear and I have both been under the knife, and I know how it is, big guy.
Well, and, what's funny about that is I operated on Sandy, and when they would come in for most visits, the doctor, I've operated on your daughter, it's 5-10 minutes, and the whole challenge of a doctor is like, I want it to be 5 minutes, but I want to make them think like it was 30.
Right.
And with him, I allotted an hour. So, tell me how fixing this femur is going to go.
Right.
And I made sure I'd give him a book to kind of throw him off.
Yeah. The thing about Coach Skip Bertman is he immerses himself in whatever he's doing. He wants to know everything. Like, even to this day, he's 85 and a half. He was at an event. I was
and most 7-year-olds go, I'm 7.5.
Right.
He's 85 and a half.
He's 85 and a half. You got to give him that half. When you get up in age, you need that half. But he was at an event we did January 9th for the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame called Champions of the Diamond. And we had all these legends of baseball, most of which were from Louisiana, but we did have Roger Clemens was there.
Todd was there.
And Todd Walker was there. And Coach Bertman, the ultimate AD, the ultimate fundraiser, the ultimate LSU baseball coach, he pulls me aside. He's like, hey, Ron, listen, we made some money. We did well tonight for the foundation. I mean, he wants to know the numbers. Yeah. He wants to know, how did it go? You get any feedback, big guy? Yeah, how did it go?
Well, I don't know if you know, he and my brother Jason live next door to each other.
Oh, I know. I've heard all the stories. Your brother has been the hero many times for the Bertmans.
Yes. Well, and Jason likes to say, because I'm the orthopedic surgeon, he's the therapist. He goes, it's not fair. You get him asleep for an hour and I get him awake for 30. And I think so. He's like, yeah, my job. He says, Craig, my job is like the Arkansas punter. Remember how he would kind of do this and line up? Because my job is to line it up for you, And but in the Sandy case, I think the Bertmans think Jason fixed Sandy.
Everything. Yeah. Well, Coach Bertman, to this day, he goes and sees your brother 3 times a week and gets some therapy done.
That's right. Next door.
And what's funny is that he's the only, and my sister trained him years ago, probably 15 years ago. She was his personal trainer. And when you deal with the Bertmans, especially Coach Bertman, they tell you what you're going to do.
No, I know this.
As a doctor,
this I know.
They're not the patient. You listen. Hey, this is what I need
Here's
you to
what
do.
you're going to do.
Exactly.
So listen, you got to give us because you impersonate, but you also probably absorbed through osmosis a lot of the leadership principles, and now you're a leader yourself. So give us, but those are best done in stories, right? Tell us a couple skip stories, but the one I want you to tell is "It's Not Your Fault."
Oh, yeah. So I'll start with "It's Not Your Fault." Coach Bertman, when I played for him.
And you got to do it in his voice.
No, I will. In 1991, 92, 93, I was fortunate to be on the first 2 national championship teams of LSU baseball. And Coach Bertman was a very big motivational guy. He read a lot of books. He had a lot of, he'd put a lot of motivational poems and things in your locker. He would listen to a lot of audio tapes. He got into video maybe around 96 with the Warren Morris days. He was coaching the USA Olympic team. They had a bigger budget. And he started playing with videos. And then from 96 to the time he finished in 01, he was a big video motivational guy. But when I was with him was the audio and the book tape era. And he would always try to give us some stuff. Well, before each game and after each game, he had some motivation for us. We'd come around as a group and in a circle. Well, one game, we're playing the Maine Black Bears. Okay, and this is my sophomore year, and we're playing them on a Friday night. It's probably the 3rd week of the season, but it's Maine's first week of the season. They had been, hadn't been outside of the gym for 3 months up there. It was 8 feet of snow, the whole deal. So they come down, and they are adrenalized. They are fired up, and people now don't realize that Maine used to be a really good baseball program. They went to the College World Series 3 times in the 80s, so they were really good. So we were catching them in 92. They were still relevant, had some good players.
And y'all were on the way up.
And we were on the way up. And they come to play us on a Friday night. I'm going to start the game, and I get knocked out in the first inning. I get 2 outs, and I get hooked. A walk, a single, a double, an error. Next thing you know, they've scored 2 runs and the bases are loaded, and Coach Bertman's hooking me.
Yeah.
And I was like a stand and 8 count. I was in shock.
What year were you?
I was a sophomore.
Okay,
so I go, we lose the game.
Yeah.
We lose the game, and so we're standing around the circle in right field. And I'm feeling terrible. I'm letting the team down. It was probably I think it might have been our 2nd loss of the year. It was early in the season. And I'm still feeling terrible. I'm standing on the outside of the circle just, oh, my God, I'm never going to pitch here again, that kind of thing. And Coach Bertman says, hey, guys, listen, today was a tough one. They were adrenalized. They hadn't been outside in months. And the ball looked big. And, come on, it happens. It's baseball. You don't win them all. Look, we're going to come back tomorrow. We're going to win the doubleheader. We're going to win the series. Don't worry about it. Go home tonight. Get a good night's rest. I want you to feel good tomorrow because we got 2. And listen, guys, tonight, it's not your fault we lost today. It's my fault. And when he said that, for a half a beat, for a second, I let my guard down. My shoulders kind of fell, and I was like, okay, it's not my fault. It's his fault. For a minute, I relaxed. And he said, see, it's not your fault. It's my fault we lost today because I started the wrong pitcher. See, Rantz thought the freaking game started at 7 o'clock instead of 6:30, and he was late for the bus. And as he's saying it, he had long fingers, like he had 6'5" fingers on a 6 foot tall guy. And he sticks his finger towards me. Everybody moves out of the way. And he comes towards me. He puts his finger right on my nose, and he says, see, Rantz thought the game started at 7 instead of 6:30. Ready, break. Yeah. we all walk up.
But it wasn't my fault.
I thought you said it wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that was the worst. That was like the worst moment. But the cool thing about that was I exchanged T-shirts with a Maine player after that series. I gave him my LSU baseball gray T-shirt. He gave me his Maine baseball number 27, navy blue T-shirt. I wore that T-shirt under my uniform every single time I knew I was going to pitch the rest of the year, and never had a bad one like that again.
Right, right. Well, tell us a story about who was the pitcher where he went to relieve him, and he said it's not your fault.
Well, man, a couple of them I got.
Well, you don't have to name them.
Okay.
You don't have to name the pitcher.
Yeah.
But the whole thing of it's not your fault. It's my fault.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell. Because Doug tells it. Doug Thompson. He told Doug Thompson one time, who of course does the radio for LSU baseball. He told Doug, hey, it's not your fault. We lost, like same kind of scenario.
Yeah.
He always did that once a year. He kind of had that but instead of saying he missed the bus, he went with it's not your fault, it's mine because I recruited you. I should have never recruited you here.
It's not your fault.
It's
the ultimate
But what's funny is now Coach Burtman, when we sit around, and he's beloved by the former players and everything, and we sit around and we tell stories or we have dinner, he cringes a little bit and he's like, see, Rantz is so full of it. I never said that. And I'm like, no, Coach, you absolutely said that.
On the nose.
100%. He's like, come on. Yeah. He's making that up. I'm like, no, that's true.
Well, give us one more story of any kind, a Burtman story that has this.
Well, the best part is, I'll tell you my recruitment story. So my going into my senior year of high school, my family moves to Phoenix, Arizona. My dad became the head of anesthesia for the Gary Hall Eye Surgery Institute in Phoenix. And so we moved there. So that summer before my senior year, I'm living in Phoenix. I'm getting ready to go to high school there, playing AAU basketball for this school, playing something for that school, trying to figure out where I'm going to go. Well, at the end of the day, I ended up coming back to Menard High in Alexandria, living with Dr. L.J. Mayu in Marksville, former head of the Ducks Unlimited, and went to Menard and lived with them. And so Arizona State, Arizona were recruiting me heavily. And my mom kind of wanted me to go there. I wanted to see her baby, right? Wanted to be right there to be her son play as opposed to 4 states over. So I wanted to go to LSU, and people don't realize that in football, like you played, you're either a walk-on or a scholarship player. There's no in between. But in baseball, it's a business negotiation. Yeah. Like the shortstop's getting a 25% scholarship, the second baseman's a walk-on, the third baseman's getting 50% scholarship. Like it's a business negotiation. They have a pie, they got to slice it up into all these pieces. So I go on my visit. Coach Burtman brings me in his office and says, "Ooh, listen, we'd love to have you here at LSU. We're going to give you a 25% scholarship, big guy."
With the wink.
With the wink. And so I call my dad, who's in Phoenix, and my dad's a businessman. He knows I'm holding firm 100% offers at some of these other schools, and he's not having it, right? I'm not gonna wait. You only get 25% versus 100, right?
Yeah.
So Coach Burtman calls me on the phone, and he says, "Hey, and I said, Coach, man, my dad's a businessman. He's not going to let me take a 25% scholarship." And Coach Burtman's like, you in-state kids are so spoiled. See, listen, I need the money for the out-of-state kids because they're more expensive. And he goes into this big diatribe thing. He goes, "How much is Menard High a year?" I don't know, Coach, about $5,000. I mean, if your parents can afford Menard, they can afford the 75%. So we hang up the phone, and we're not in agreement. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to be a Sun Devil, and we don't talk for 2 weeks.
You and Skip?
Coach Burtman and I don't talk for 2 weeks. And so I'm like, I guess I'm going to go to Arizona State. So sure enough, one day I'm in class, and a student worker comes in from class with a FedEx manila envelope. Here's an envelope, Ronnie Rantz from LSU baseball. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. 17-year-old Manny Rooster kid. Give it to me. And so everybody's looking over my shoulder. What you got? What you got? And I open it up, and it's a handwritten note from Coach Burtman, and it says, "Sorry we got off on the wrong foot. So I'd love to have you at LSU to play for the Tigers. How about this? 50% your first year, 60% your sophomore year, and so on." Right? Yeah. I'm going to call you Sunday night at 7 o'clock for your answer, right? This is the pre-cell phone.
Yeah.
So, sure, I'm like, all right, this is great. My dad's going to accept this. We're good. We're going to be a Tiger. So he calls me. And he gets Randy Davis to call me, the assistant coach at the time who was recruiting me. And they literally, on a bus back from Alabama, pull over at a gas station, everybody can go to the restroom, gets Randy on a payphone, calls me, "Hey, man, what's it going to be?" And I said, "Randy, I'm going to be a Tiger. I'm going to be a Tiger." He goes, "Oh, that's great, man. Hang on, talk to Chad Oj. I'm going to go tell Coach Burtman." So he walks on the bus. Coach Burtman is sitting in his first seat right on the bus, door open, smoking a little Have a Tampa cigar that he loves, and he's got the door open and let the smoke out, and he's probably got a Crown and Water. I don't know how, but he did. And Randy comes on and says, "Coach, I talked to Rantz." And he goes, "What did he say?" And he takes a drag. And Randy says, "He's going to be a Tiger, Coach." And Skip goes, "That's great. That FedEx gets him every time, I swear." It gets him every single time.
Well, he probably knew I'm going to start at 25. But if not, I got this card to play with a FedEx later.
Randy told me my first day of practice when I showed up a few months later, he said, "Hey, man, if you'd have held out, you could have got more."
It's a negotiation. It's a negotiation.
Yep.
Wow. So tell us what's going on in your life now, because you've bought a baseball team.
Yeah.
I think you have a media thing. You have the Hall of Fame. Like, you got a bunch of irons in the fire. So tell us what the Ronnie Rantz empire looks like.
So
now.
2016, I was named the CEO of the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame Foundation. So there's a museum in Natchitoches that's a beautiful museum, award-winning museum on the banks of the Cane River. It's been opened in Natchitoches since 2013. So I'm the CEO of that. And then in 2022, February of 2022, I bought a baseball team called the Baton Rouge Rougarou. And what the Baton Rouge Rougarou is simply it's a summer collegiate wood bat baseball league team that plays in the Texas Collegiate League. So think minor league baseball, the Baby Cakes or the Blue Wahoos or the Shuckers in Biloxi, but instead of it being professionals, it's college players.
Okay.
There's probably over 25 collegiate leagues around the country. The Cape Cod being the most famous.
Right.
And
so it's Cape Cod, but here.
It's Cape Cod, but you sweat more.
Yeah.
You're not in Massachusetts in the summer. You're in Texas and Louisiana, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And in June and July, college baseball players all across the country go play in these leagues to get better and to get scouted.
So
and all
who
that
do y'all
kind of
play against?
So we actually have the Acadiana Cane Cutters, which are in Youngsville.
Okay.
We have first year team, the Lake Charles Gumbo Gators.
Love it.
That are going to be playing, and then the rest of the teams are over in Texas.
So it's like how many games in this?
48 games between May 30th and the end of July.
Wow.
And then the championship's August 3rd. So you'll have some guys, like obviously we'll have a couple LSU players.
Right.
And, we hope they don't join us till July 1, right? Because that means they'll have played all the way in the national championship and won it and probably join us a few days after they finish the season. So you got some players that will join you later in the season, but the majority of your guys are from day one.
Well, and I'm not going to say you have the gift of gab. I'm going to say you're an excellent communicator. But you do a lot of broadcasting, right?
I do. Yeah, this year I'm getting ready to do 15 LSU baseball games for the SEC ESPN network. First one I'm doing is against Stony Brook, the weekend series. But I'll do 15 games between the end of February and the beginning of May.
Now
and then, oh, by the way, as we're taping here,
yeah,
I was just appointed by Jeff Landry, the governor, to be the head of the Boxing and Wrestling Commission. I'm the chair.
That's amazing.
Of that. So
that's amazing.
I'm delving into boxing and wrestling as well.
Well, that's you've been prepared your whole life for that.
That's right.
So, and tell us, Todd does a little ESPN stuff, and DeLucci has been a guest on.
Yeah.
Tell everybody listening the difference between the play-by-play guy and the color guy.
So, yeah, you're talking about Todd Walker and David DeLucci and Ben McDonald. All three of them live, within within Louisiana. And, of course, Todd and Ben and David live in Baton Rouge. So the color analyst and the play-by-play. So Lynn Rollins, who's the majority, the guy I've done most of my games with throughout my career, is the play-by-play guy. Jim Hawthorne, play-by-play type guy. Chris Blair, play-by-play.
And they're like, this is the guy batting.
And they are the ones that are describing the action. Obviously on a radio, there's more to describe because you can't see it.
Yeah.
On TV, you can talk less. But on the radio, you got to describe the action.
Do you do more radio or TV?
TV at this point, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Doug Thompson has got more of a face for radio. I like to show mine on TV. So we let him do the radio.
Doug, I can't wait. I'm going to have Doug on and see what he says about that.
But Lynn and I have been doing games together. We've done more games together as a duo, as a combo, probably than any college baseball group ever.
Really?
So we started doing games in 1998 together, and have done mostly LSU, but we've done a lot of other colleges and sports and things together as well. So
you'll do away games too, or
no. I don't do away games anymore. The way the SEC network kind of works is every school has its own in-house broadcast team, and then there's some national broadcast teams that'll pop around to the different venues. But then the analyst is usually a former player or coach who is kind of breaking down the action, describing what they're seeing.
But you pretty much have to have something to say between every play.
For the most part, yeah. You when things happen, you got to be able to
fill in the color.
But the thing about it is with television, it's not the same as radio.
Sure.
Radio, you're talking a lot more. TV, you can let it breathe. You can let the action,
especially
when somebody hits a homer, like Tommy White hits a homer.
Just let the crowd
let
go.
the crowd, let the pictures tell the story. Don't actually be forced to jump in there.
Well, that brings me to the point of something I've always thought you were really good at, and that's reading the room. But in providing the color,
right,
you got to read the room for everybody that's watching.
Yeah, and I've always thought when I've done the games, I've always tried to dumb it down. And because not everybody, I mean, I feel like I've got a Harvard education in college baseball thanks to Skip Bertman, but not everybody does.
Right.
And most people don't. And so I don't want to like go too high level. It's like watching a football game and going, man, they're running a cover 3 and a cover 0 and and like, wait a minute, like is there a tutorial on what a cover 3 and a 0 and a 5 gap and all? Like, most people just kind of act like they know what they're talking about, but they don't.
Because really, you're not trying to make the viewer up to your level.
Right.
You're just trying to entertain them.
You're trying to make sure everybody from a novice to a pro can understand what you're trying to say. And so I'll sometimes go out of my way to explain something because I want just the layman fan, the passing fan that just happens to be watching for 30 minutes understand without knowing all the nuance, of the game.
Right. So let's extract some life lessons here, because part of what we do here is, who's listening that might say, yeah, this is all entertaining, but like, what's my takeaway, And so you could go back to the guy opening the letter or the 10th grader that gets the, do you want to be here? And looking all that you've accomplished in life, what would you tell that guy?
Well, I am not one of those people that believes, boy, if I could go back and do it all over again, I'd do it exactly the same. I'm not that guy, right? I mean, there's absolute mistakes and things, and I wish I could tell myself to do it. But one of the things that I'll answer that question in this roundabout way by saying Coach Bertman was a life lesson guy, like all great coaches, Nick Saban and everybody. Your best coaches were talking about life and then being a man and responsibility and all those types of things. One of the things that Coach Bertman talked about, and he threw a million things out there, but only so many can stick, is he would say, well, my favorite line was, see, guys, baseball, the nation's pastime is not baseball and apple pie like everybody thinks, right? The nation's pastime is T.O.B., transferal of blame. That's the nation's pastime, because everybody blames somebody else for their shortcoming. Hey, I got an F on that class because the teacher did me wrong, or I struck out because the umpire called that pitch off the plate that was really a ball. Like, everybody blames someone else for their problems and their mistakes. And that was the thing, of all the things that I learned from Coach Bertman, that would be number one for me. That would be the thing that I feel like I've done the best to try to represent in my life is T.O.B. And I feel like I don't transfer the blame. I don't blame others when I screw up. I just own it. Yeah. And I think that was something I'm appreciative. But going back to that young man, I would say, one, be a better student. I was a bad student. We procrastinated big time. Mike Neal, great student. Ron Rantz, not so much. So I would say take school more seriously. I thought I was going to play in the major leagues for 10 years and, we'll figure it out later, right? Yeah. That didn't happen thanks to a couple surgeries. And then the other thing was, I would say, just take school and work harder. Yeah. I was cursed by things came naturally for me. Mm-hmm. I was a gifted athlete at 6'5", 250, could run well, throw well. I didn't have to grind as hard as the other guy. Things came, and there's something to be said for the guy that grinds. Yeah. And so I wish I'd had a little more grind in me back then. That might have helped me a little earlier in life. I think I figured it out at some point. But
I think you're grinding right now. Yeah. Well, you're coming to a point where you have to. It's sink or swim, Right. So I have to ask you, and we're going to land the plane here, but we were recently at Washington Mardi Gras, and we were at the same table. And I've been friends for 30 years. But my son Gabe was sitting next to you. And, of course, he was looking at all the ladies in the room. And I just saw a lot of interaction. And I got to know that you can tell us. And it's probably different than the advice you would have just given yourself back then. Give us some of the things you were telling him.
Well, I enjoyed talking with him. He's a great young man. And, he was overwhelmed. Is he 16?
He's 17. Thinks he's going to try to make a run at baseball. Okay. He's no fat, super strong. he bats left, throws right, and he's got this vibe. But
well, for
there's the ladies.
For a 17-year-old guy dressed in a tux, that's a good-looking kid. I mean, that's a little overwhelming. All the princesses, they were probably.
We didn't get to experience that.
Yeah, I mean, 60 probably, 50 princesses of around his age, from around the state, all dressed in gowns and all that, walking by him, and his head was spinning. So I think the advice I gave him was, look, just smile and go up to them and introduce yourself. Yeah. They're just as nervous as you are.
Yeah.
So just go be a nice guy, and it'll work for you.
Well, what's been interesting is, and you and I did not have this social media and all this. My daughter is a big deal in social media, and he had a breakup he was dealing with, and he was still kind of come in, and he's thankfully our children talk to us and like, I'm sad. Why are you sad? My girlfriend. Well, that was a long time ago. Well, I saw her. I got triggered. I'm sad. So she was sad. Well, my daughter tells him, Gabe, what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to give you a lob. So what that is, for those that don't know, is on social media. She took some shots of him, and they're all choreographed.
Right. Who's your hot brother?
Shirt off, and this, that, and the other. And she puts on her story, and it can't be a post. It has to be on story. I don't know all these
I don't know that either.
And
I'm learning.
It's like, hey, my brother's single. I'm looking for a sister-in-law. And tags him in it.
Oh wow!
And then the
DMs
just start flowing in.
Wow!
And I'm like, man, I never got lobs. Like this is
that's
amazing.
Better than Bumble and Hinge. I mean, it's just sort through it.
Yeah. And so for a couple of days, he was strutting around like,
Oh, that's too funny.
And
well, your daughter was cool. I met her. She's over at USC, and of course, she's dating Mr. Top Gun.
Yeah.
Our boyfriend's literally Top Gun.
Yeah, he's a fighter pilot.
6'5".
Yeah.
Or something like that, which is crazy.
Yeah. We had him on the podcast.
Yeah.
And of course, here I am thinking like, all right. Because I told him
that's a big commitment if you had him on the podcast.
I
we're like you better be the real deal if we're gonna go forever on a podcast.
Or if not, I'll give you a lob later.
right.
No, I'm kidding, Hadley.
Right.
No, I told him, I'm like, I think this is called Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Hadley, which is my daughter.
Right.
He laughed about it. He did a great job.
Good.
And I think he was nervous about it.
I bet he was.
Yeah. Maybe should have been, right?
Mm-hmm. It should be.
I should have gone.
That's a good way to interview potential. My daughter's 24 and single. That's a good way to interview potential suitors is to do a podcast and bring them all on.
Yeah.
So you're teaching me something. I might have to go that way.
Well, you know what I've learned now. If I had to do it again with him, I would say, look, if this doesn't work out, it's not your fault. It's my fault.
Right.
I brought you in.
Right. Exactly.
Last thing, what's next for Ronnie Rantz? What does the future look like for Ronnie Rantz?
I honestly. What I'm doing now, I want to enhance, right? Like the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, there's a lot of projects and things on the horizon. I'm only been in it, 7 years, and there's a lot. Like this year, we're inducting Drew Brees and Daniel Cormier, the MMA fighter, and Simone Augustus. These are all some of the people that we're going to enshrine. And there's a lot of things, renovations and interactive displays and things I want to do to make the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame the best in the country. And it's a little bit of a challenge being in Natchitoches, right? It's not in New Orleans, not in Baton Rouge. It's up there for a long history from going back to the early 70s. So I want to do that. The Baton Rouge Rougarou was a passion play for me. It had been two previous owners that had the team, and each of them for a year. It didn't work out. And I was like, I love baseball. I love Baton Rouge. I want to prove that this can work. And it has.
Good.
We've had great partnerships with Raising Cane's and Gordon McKernan and Relief Windows, and all those guys have been supporters and backers of ours. And we just keep getting better and better.
Good.
And so I want to see, can we get a new stadium, in the future as a new home? Because right now we're in Pete Goldsby Field, downtown near the state capitol, 75-year-old building. So there's a lot of growth potential there. And who knows, this whole boxing wrestling commission thing that
you never know.
I got to read up. I got to learn. I got to learn it. But I enjoy MMA. I enjoy that world. So it'll be fun. I look forward to that. And I look forward to what's happening with my daughter, right? You've got multiple kids. I've got one. And she's about to go into healthcare, and she's got a fellowship with a woman's hospital coming up that she won, and so I'm proud of her, and want to kind of see what her next chapter is in her life, and be a cheerleader for that.
Well, man, we're really proud of you, and thanks for being on. If people want to, do you want to be found? How can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, social media is big these days.
Yeah.
I'm all over Facebook.
Will you give me a lob?
Ronnie Rantz. Can I get Hadley's number? I need a lob. I'm single. Is there?
Oh yeah.
So Hadley, it would be like Hadley's friends' moms.
Hadley, if you're listening,
Right.
Ronnie needs a lob to your friend's single mothers.
Yeah, I mean, she's out in California, but I mean, we got some Louisiana ties. But just Ronnie Rantz on Facebook. You can find me on there.
Gotcha. Thanks for being on. I look forward to seeing you around.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Great seeing you, man.
Take care. Thank you for joining us today, and a big thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in to this surgical exploration of politics, healthcare, and life. I've been your host, Dr. Craig Greene. Remember to stay informed, stay sharp, and join us next time to see which of life's topics we'll dissect under the knife.